That first concert, I paid for everything out of my pocket, everything out of my savings.
Really?
It all came out of my savings. And let me tell you, it was the best, money that I've ever spent on anything. I didn't spend it on a car. I didn't spend it on a vacation. I spent it on building an orchestra, and it was amazing. It was the best investment ever.
Hello, and welcome to Art Restart, where we explore how artists are reinventing their fields and building a new landscape for the arts. I'm Piercarlo Talenti, the producer and editor of this podcast, a production of the Thomas S. Keenan Institute for the Arts at the University of North Carolina School of the Arts. In this episode, we'll be speaking with conductor Jessica Bejarano. Jessica is an outlier in the American orchestral world, to say the least. For one thing, she's female, and believe it or not, according to Women's Philharmonic Advocacy, in the 2024-25 season, only 20.8% of concerts by the top 21 orchestras in the U.S. were conducted by women. And today, of the 25 largest American orchestras, only one has a female music director. So there's that. Jessica is also Latina and lesbian. And she has visible tattoos, and I doubt you see many of those on orchestral podia. Among her tattoos, by the way, featured prominently on her right forearm, is her favorite conductor, Tchaikovsky. In other words, when she steps onto the podium, she doesn't just conduct. In a way, she redefines what leadership can look like in the orchestral world. Now, by 2019, Jessica was already building a solid conducting resume, leading community orchestras in the Bay Area, as well as accepting freelance gigs around the world. But faced with a glacial pace of change in the classical music world, she took a leap of faith, and she founded her own ensemble, the San Francisco Philharmonic. The SF Phil's mission is to center diversity, equity, and inclusion not just as a tagline, but as a lived experience for musicians and audiences alike. In the last 6 years, under her leadership, the SF Phil has built a loyal and diverse fan base and has collaborated with everyone from Grammy-winning composers to local rap icons, while also offering masterclasses for emerging conductors. Jessica spoke to me from her home in San Francisco. I started off by asking, surprise, surprise, for her origin story. What made her want to be a conductor?
So I grew up in East L.A., in a very poverty-stricken part of East L.A. It was a very, minority community, a lot of immigrants. Our high school, the statistics were for us and we were like the top 10 high school at that time in the country with the highest statistics of teenage pregnancy, dropout, murder, incarceration. We were top 10 in the country at that time when I was in high school. So, the symphony, the ballet, the opera, that was not part of the culture. Our family outings, that was not part of our lives, far from it. We did have marching band, we had concert band, we had jazz band. But as far as the symphonic orchestral...
You played in those, right? What was your instrument?
Yes, my instrument was trumpet. I started in fifth grade on trumpet. But after high school, I knew that I wanted to pursue a career in music. I wanted to become a music teacher. So my next step was to go to college. So I went to Pasadena City College in Pasadena, California. And to retain my scholarship, I had to play in 3 ensembles. So I signed up for the wind ensemble. I signed up for the jazz ensemble. And my friend, who's a fellow trumpet player, said, join the orchestra with me. And I was like, what's that? What's orchestra? And so she's like, just come with me. And I signed up for orchestra. And I remember that first rehearsal like it was just yesterday. We were unpacking our instruments and there was, a plethora of string players in there and, the woodwinds, the brass, the percussion and we were getting ready to rehearse this composer and this piece. It was called Beethoven Symphony No. 5. Never heard of it. Mm. We were also getting ready to rehearse Dona Nobis Pacem, which includes a large chorus by Ralph Vaughan Williams. And so I remember sitting in that ensemble, that configuration with that repertoire and thinking, this is so foreign. But after that first rehearsal, I was blown away. I was absolutely blown away. And I went to Tower Records after that rehearsal, that first rehearsal. when Tower Records existed.
Mm-hmm.
And I bought as many classical CDs as my arms could hold. And I went home that evening and I listened all night into, the break of day. And I remember like literally crying, thinking, this is beautiful. This is gorgeous music. This is a beautiful art form. Why have I been, deficient of this for the first 18 years of my life? But I have it now and I'm not going to let it go. And it was just like that music was always in me. The love of that repertoire was always in me. And, the switch was flipped on now. And I was going full throttle with it from that point on.
So you also had to catch up not only musically, but culturally, because the classical music ecosystem is very much its own culture. So you also kind of had to break in that way, right?
I did. And that was the other fascinating thing, besides, the music itself, was learning about these composers, and their stories and, the history and where in the world it happened and why it happened. One of my musicians and my audience members know that I'm a Tchaikovsky everything. I'm a Tchaikovsky scholar. I wrote my master's thesis on Tchaikovsky. I went to go study him in St. Petersburg, Russia. And sometimes I get asked, by, people, women or people of color, why you, Jessica? Why are you supporting dead white men? Why are you using this platform to, support their music? And, I talk about like, Tchaikovsky, you see a dead white man, but Tchaikovsky was also a gay man, living during an era and a time in Russia where it was difficult to be himself. He couldn't walk down the street and love openly. He couldn't marry the man he loved. He couldn't have an open relationship, a public relationship. So for Tchaikovsky, that yearning, that anguish, that hurt, that anger, that, depression, he poured it into his music. It's in his music because that was his vehicle of expression. So when they ask me how and why do you support these guys, I'm like, there's more to the skin. There's more to the color of the skin. He suffered a lot. You think about Beethoven, he was completely deaf by the end of his life. He suffered a lot as well. So they're not just dead white men. These are human beings that really used music to really pour out their torture, their soul, their experience.
And so how did you pivot or grow from playing the trumpet to wanting to have a conducting career?
As a kid, like in middle school, I was always put in leadership positions. Like I was the trumpet section leader, so I would conduct little sectionals. In high school, I was the drum major, so I was conducting up in the stands during football games, on the 50-yard line at football games as well, basketball games, you name it. And then when I went off to college, the University of Wyoming later on, I was a drum major for the University of Wyoming as well. And I was also the music director of the pep bands. So I was always in a position of conducting and leading, and it was natural. And it was
You're that student. I know that student.
That was me. Back in the day, we were called nerds, but now we're called cool.
That's right.
Yeah. So, my love for, orchestra and the repertoire, the symphonic music, and then my natural innate, leadership abilities and my love of leadership and leading and conducting, the two just kind of melted when I was at the University of Wyoming. And I was just like, oh, this is what I'm going to do. I had to take a course as a music ed major, because that's what I was as an undergrad, in conducting. And if you're going to be a music teacher, you have to know how to conduct your ensemble. So we would take a course in basic conducting. And when I took that course, I fell in love with the art of conducting. And I remember asking the orchestral professor if he can give me private lessons. And he agreed. And so once a week, and this was not even part of my curriculum, but once a week, I would go to his office and we would score study. He would teach me how to score study. He would teach me, baton technique. He would teach me, a rehearsal technique. And from there, it was just like, okay, well, I'm going to join the Conductors Guild because I wanted to go to workshops and conferences. And once I graduated from my undergrad, I was just like, okay, I'm going to become a conductor. It was just very natural, very organic. I didn't think about it twice. I didn't do the history of women in the field. I didn't look at the statistics. I did none of that.
So it was good that you actually knew less.
Exactly. I knew nothing other than I loved it. I wanted to do it and I was going to do it. And I jumped head in. And boy, oh boy, that I realized shortly after that, that this was going to be a very, very difficult journey. It's still a very difficult journey, but when it's fueled by passion, it really does pull you, through and up. So, but yeah, that's where I decided that moment as an undergrad when I was taking private conducting lessons.
What were kind of the major hurdles that you discovered made it really difficult in those early years?
When I went to grad school, I had an orchestral professor and a choral professor. Same situation where I was taking private conducting lessons every week. And then every week I would get to conduct the orchestra. And, some people call it tough love, but, when you're conducting an orchestra and the professor just humiliates you in front of the orchestra and minimizes you, it becomes really, really difficult. It becomes demeaning, really. So I was trying to figure out, is this tough love or is this, the way I'm supposed to be treated or is this happening for all the wrong reasons?
Was he or she treating other students like that?
There was only two. No, short answer,
okay.
No, not at all. Not at all. There was a first year, it's a master's program. So there was a first year student and a second year student. During one of our private one-on-one conducting lessons, he stopped the lesson and asked me if I was serious. And I said, serious about what? He's like, are you serious? And I was like, about what? And he pointed at me from head to toe and toe back to head. Are you serious about becoming a conductor? And I said, yes, absolutely. I'm dedicated. I'm passionate. I want to do this. I'm all in. And he proceeded to say, well, then go back to your country because it's not going to happen in mine. And it was shocking. It took a minute for it to register, like what he just told me. And I remember going home that day. I didn't even finish the rest of my classes. I just went home and stared at a wall forever thinking, like, academia is supposed to nurture you and prepare you and, for the real world. And if this is the way academia is treating me in my pursuit of becoming a conductor, how is the real world going to treat me, as a conductor? And so I remember briefly thinking, I'm done. I give up. I don't want to do this. It's too hard. But then a second later, I was just like, no, this is your passion. This is your dream. This is your life, and this is what you want to do. And don't let anyone take it away from you. So I had to learn how to take a no and turn it into a yes, how to take a negative and turn it into a positive, how to take a negative experience and use that energy to catapult me even further than I thought I could go. It would motivate and inspire me to do and become more and to continue on this path. And so it's been interesting, to have these barriers, but these barriers are some of the things that have made me the strong person that I am today.
You started building a resume, conducting all over the States and even internationally as a freelance conductor. So I'd love to know at what point you decided, wait, I want to have my own orchestra, which even before the pandemic was already a challenging thing to do. I think all classical music ensembles in the country were, facing challenges. So, I want to know why it was important for you to take on that challenge of founding your own Philharmonic.
So, my journey as a student, as a musician, as a patron, as a conductor have all played into why I built the SF Phil. Going back to the story that I just told you about and how the professor treated me, I knew that I didn't want to be a part of that. I wanted to be the solution, going out into the world. I wanted to change that energy, that way that people that look like me were treated. It doesn't have to be a thing that happens to anybody beyond me anymore. It needs to stop. It can be a positive experience. But in order for it to be a positive experience, I have to be proactive in helping to change that culture and that environment. Same thing when I went to Europe. Sometimes, how musicians treat you when you're on the podium, was not always the best or the welcoming. If you were a person, of color or a woman. I've performed, or I used to direct an unnamed orchestra where I grew the orchestra in musicians to the point where we had a wait list. I grew the musicianship of the orchestra where we were really bringing in very powerful players. I broke attendance records of audience, acquisition, broke records of, donations ever given to the orchestra. And this orchestra had been around for over 50 years. There's a lot of news media around us, PBS did a story on us, Telemundo did a story on us, the Today Show did, and the board thought that I was trying to turn a community orchestra into a professional orchestra. And I was doing something bad and changing the culture of an organization. I was just like, why is it difficult for a woman to do what they do and be really great at it, but have it be looked at as a negative? It's just like all these things are changing in a positive direction because I'm really good at what I do, not because I'm trying to, change the culture or the mission statement of the orchestra. So that was really kind of, confusing, where you're a woman, you can't be good at what you do. And if you are, there's an ulterior negative, motive behind you, And then, the other things that I've experienced too is, I went to a professional symphony concert, and, I asked an usher, like, where's my seat? And I showed him my ticket. And instead of helping me, they just looked at me and they said, don't you know your alphabet? And I was like, oh, dear God, like, how horrible.
Oh,
like,
no.
You're supposed to help your patrons, not minimize and diminish them. Yeah. I've been to other professional, companies where I was sitting in a box, and this woman said, excuse me, you're in the wrong place. I'm like, no, I'm not. She's like, this is a box. This is box seating. I'm like, I'm very aware. She goes, you need to show me your ticket or you need to leave. I'm like, I don't need to show you anything. And she's like, if you don't show me your ticket, I'm going to call security. I was like, please do. And she did. She called security, because I'm sitting in box A, the seats were like $1,000 a seat. And the security came and asked me what was going on. I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, can I see your ticket? Then I showed it to him. And he looked at this older woman and said, yeah, she belongs here. And she tried to rip my ticket out of his hand because she wanted to see it for herself. And I grabbed it back out of his hand and I was like, you don't need to see my ticket. He already confirmed that I'm fine here, that I do belong here. And the usher, just told me, enjoy the show. And I was like, yeah, thank you. And
oh my God, you encountered a symphonic Karen. That's the most dangerous kind.
Yeah. It was the ballet. It was the ballet. I was at ballet.
Okay. Whoa.
Yeah,
wow.
but still. And so, the box had 3 seats, seat 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6 right behind 1, 2, and 3. And so she was sitting right in front of me. And as soon as the show started, she put on her big hat so I couldn't see around her hat. And it's just like these experiences where it's just like, this is horrific. I was tired of that, and so I was just like, I'm going to create an orchestra where it's okay to be me, where it's okay to look like me, where it's okay to have people look like me, sound like me, come from where I come from, and be in these spaces, whether you're an audience member, a musician on stage, the conductor on the podium, or a board member, where you can be and look like me and be in any of these spaces and be welcomed, be embraced, be respected, and feel like you belong there. And so, a lot of these organizations wave banners of, diversity, equity, inclusion, and that is amazing. But like, how do you implement diversity, equity, and inclusion? Like, how do you really, really put that into effect, with every corner of your organization, including your ushers, including your audience members, And so for me, it was important to build that.
Yeah. So tell me how you built it. What were the building blocks that you put in to make sure you reach that goal?
So I had just finished conducting at the Bulgarian State Opera House in Stara Zagora, Bulgaria. And on my flight back to San Francisco, I told myself, like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to build my own orchestra. And it's going to be really about, the implementation and celebration of diversity. And so by the time I landed in San Francisco, I had like a blueprint, of like, okay, I got to get the musicians. I got to get a venue. I got to, pick repertoire. I have to find a board of directors. So as soon as I hit ground, I called all of my good friends who are musicians or administrators in the music world. And I was like, hey, I want to build an orchestra. And they're like, let's do it. And
they were all in. They were all in on it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
My friends were all in on it. And I picked like each friend had a certain, strength. One was, a designer. One was a writer. A few were musicians. A couple others were educators.
Yeah.
So I just picked, a variety of people with a variety of strengths. And, we sat around at a bar and we designed a logo together, and off we went, and it was a lot of administrative legwork, like pulling it all together from the venue, from the librarian work, from sourcing the music to now sourcing the musicians. Now, I have a following of musicians here in the city, but I don't have a huge following of professional musicians in the city here in San Francisco. So I just started, talking to people, and asking them if they were interested in joining the Philharmonic and if they had friends that they can bring. And so the word just started tumbling and snowballing out, into the musician world. And that's how I was able to bring in the musicians. Like if you do good work as a conductor, if you're a great leader, people will follow you. People will want to follow you. And so I was lucky enough to source a lot of great musicians. And it was a blind endeavor for all of us. I've never built an orchestra from the ground up. Just like when I jumped into the idea of becoming a conductor, I didn't know anything. I didn't know the statistics. I didn't know, what it was going to be like. Same thing with building my orchestra. I didn't know what to do. I didn't read a book. I didn't take a course on it. Like I just jumped in, and figured it out along the way. And it's a lot of work, and you have to be 100% dedicated. Every day you have to do something to grow it, to continue to build it. I went from being a conductor that all I did was conduct all the time to now I'm like an administrator 80% of the time. And then whatever time I have left at the end of the day, then I get to score study, play the piano, and off to rehearsals I go.
Are you able at this point to pay your musicians and to pay yourself as the executive director?
So I am the volunteer executive director. It's a volunteer position until we have the budget to hire an executive director. So I just volunteer and do all the ED's work. But no, I'm not a paid executive director, never have been. I am a music director, conductor, and I'm given an honorarium just per concert as a director. When I founded this orchestra back in 2019, our first concert was February 3rd of 2020. So the turnaround from like the thought of the orchestra to actually being on stage was just, like a few months, which was it's really unheard of to start an orchestra that quickly.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And so one of the things that an orchestra needs is funding. And so that first concert, I paid for everything out of my pocket. Everything out of my savings.
Really?
Yeah, it all came out of my savings. And let me tell you, it was the best money that I've ever spent on anything. I didn't spend it on a car. I didn't spend it on a vacation. I spent it on building an orchestra, and it was amazing. It was the best investment ever. And so from there, we've been able to slowly and gradually build the financial side of the SFL. But that is still a branch of us that we are constantly working to fortify, especially now that a lot of grants are being taken away, the NEA things that are happening right now, and a lot of grants are being pulled. And so it's a really tough time for orchestras as far as funding. But, it's an area that we need to work even harder at. My musicians, some of them are professional musicians, so they are paid, but they're paid per service. And then there's other musicians that are semi-pros. Let's say, for example, they went to Juilliard and have a degree in violin performance, but they work for Google now, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the other half of my orchestra. They tend to volunteer their artistry.
I see.
So yeah, so we have a good balance of the two.
Well, you mentioned something that brings me to my next question, which is the climate in the country, especially around federal funding, is very different from when you started the Philharmonic, especially given that diversity, equity, and inclusion are really up front and center in your mission statement. So I'm wondering what it's like for you and your board to keep to that mission statement in today's climate.
I mean, it's our mission statement. It matters to us, now as much as it did day one. Our work centers around that. It is the heart of our mission. Right now, we're working on a few projects to really amplify that. We're working with a female composer in the East Coast to get one of her works premiered. At first I had to build the sound of the SF Philharmonic, in an audience space. And it was easier to do that, with the music of Beethoven, Bach, and Brahms. But now that we have really cemented who we are in the music world, we want to get female composers in there. We also are working
and do more new work and actually commission. That's amazing.
Right. And then also, we've done concerts with, Andre Nicotina, who is a local rap legend here in the city. We've done a concert with him 2 years ago. And right now we're in talks about doing another joint concert. And the cool thing about his concerts is for this concert, it's going to be a Bruce Lee theme. And Bruce Lee is from San Francisco. So, it's, we hired this composer, Grammy award-winning composer from L.A. to rewrite some of Bruce Lee's, cinema music, some of the rappers' music. And then there's going to be like a video montage over the orchestra of different clips of Bruce Lee's life and or his cinema. And then on the side of the walls, it's going to be this like psychedelic light show. So there's a lot of like different stimuli, all wrapped around, a rapper, a Grammy Award winner, and Bruce Lee. So this is the project that we're working on, and talk about like diversity. Like we're bringing in, like the rapper and like his following. We're bringing in like, Bruce Lee and the Chinese community, and we're bringing in the SFL and like our community, and we're going to just mount all these people and bring them into the concert hall, and have them all sit in the same space and enjoy this concert, right? Right in front of them. So that's another big project that we're working on right now.
And the dream, of course, is that your Philharmonic audience will fall in love with the rapper and that the rapper's audience will fall in love with you guys.
Exactly.
If you'd like to learn more about Jessica and read a longer version of this interview, just head to uncsa.edu/artrestart. Hey, I have a favor to ask of you. Do you know someone would enjoy this episode? And if so, won't you please share it with them? That would mean the world to us. We're always really happy to reach new ears. Our theme music is by Shanghai Restoration Project. I'm Piercarlo Talenti, and on behalf of the Thomas S. Keenan Institute for the Arts at the University of North Carolina School of the Arts, thank you for listening.